The wind, a lament older than the mountains themselves, clawed at Eliana's threadbare cloak. Each gust, a whispered accusation, a frigid denial. It tasted of ash and regret, a constant companion in this desolate kingdom of stone and silence. Above the sky bled a bruised violet the color of ancient wounds, offering no solace, no flicker of the familiar gold she remembered from her childhood. That gold she recalled with a piercing ache had danced upon the river that flowed through her village, a joyous reflection of a life she now understood to be irrevocably lost. Now only the gray grit of the peaks offered reflection, mirroring the hollow despair that had burrowed deep into her bones. She knelt, not in prayer. Prayer had become a labored breath, a desperate plea swallowed by the uncaring vastness, but in an exhaustion that permeated her very being. The rock beneath her knees was cold, radiating an almost palpable loneliness. It resonated with the loneliness that consumed her, a loneliness so profound it felt like a physical weight pressing her against the earth, threatening to suffocate the last embers of hope. For weeks, she had traversed this unforgiving land, a phantom amongst the shadows, her footsteps echoing, only to be devoured by the oppressive silence. Weeks since the last flicker of human warmth, the last shared glance, the last murmur of recognition. It wasn't the physical cold that bit hardest, nor the gnawing hunger that scraped at her stomach. It was the absolute crushing weight of isolation. To be chosen, she now understood, with a clarity that shattered her soul, was not an honor, but a sentence of exile, a penance paid in solitude. The divine whisper, once a source of vibrant joy, a symphony of guidance and comfort, had become a single resonating note, a mournful dirge sung only for her ears. It urged her forward, always forward, yet offered no reassurance, no hand to grasp, no voice to answer her silent cries. She remembered the day it began, the day the world tilted on its axis, and the veil between realities thinned, revealing glimpses of a cosmos both terrifying and sublime. She had been just a girl then, gathering wildflowers in the meadow, her laughter mingling with the buzzing of bees and the gentle murmur of her mother's song. Suddenly, the scent of the wildflowers twisted into something acrid. The sunlight fractured into 1,000 blinding shards, and the familiar melody of her mother's voice warped into a discordant howl. The whisper arrived then, not as a gentle breeze, but as a searing brand upon her soul, a purpose thrust upon her without explanation, without choice. They called her the Chosen One, a title she now despised. What choice did she have? She had been ripped from her family, from her village, from the very fabric of her existence, and cast adrift in a sea of expectation. She had witnessed the subtle, then not so subtle shifts in the eyes of her neighbors. The hesitant draw back from her touch, the whispered warnings behind cupped hands. They sensed it, she realized with a bitter pang. They felt the difference, the unsettling aura of something other clinging to her. And fear, the oldest and most reliable weapon, had driven them away. It wasn't malicious, she understood. It was survival. Humans, in their fragile and beautiful way, sought solace in the familiar. They clung to the known, to the comfortable, to the predictable. And she, with her celestial burden, was anything but. She was an anomaly, a disruption, a harbinger of change they couldn't comprehend, let alone accept. To offer support was to risk their own fragile peace, to invite the chaos she embodied. So they retreated. They offered polite smiles, averted gazes, and a silent condemnation that echoed louder than any shouted rejection. The silence now was almost unbearable. It wasn't the absence of sound, but the presence of a profound emptiness, a void that threatened to consume her entirely. She felt adrift, a single vessel on a cosmic ocean with no stars to guide her, no harbor to seek. The weight of her purpose pressed down a crushing responsibility she hadn't asked for, hadn't earned. To carry the future of a world on her shoulders when no one believed in her, no one supported her, no one even saw her. It was a burden that threatened to break her, and yet within that despair, a tiny ember persisted. A flicker of the unwavering conviction that had been forged within her soul at the moment of her choosing. It wasn't a joyous flame, but a stubborn refusal to be extinguished, a defiant whisper against the howling winds of loneliness. It wasn't a belief in herself, not yet. It was a belief in the whisper itself, a certainty that even in this desolate solitude, even in this crushing isolation, she was not abandoned. The whisper didn't offer comfort. It didn't offer praise. It didn't offer companionship. It offered a direction, a path winding through the heart of the darkness, a single unwavering imperative. Go, endure, witness. It spoke of a coming storm, a tempest of unparalleled destruction, a darkness that threatened to engulf all that was good and beautiful. It spoke of a pivotal moment, a final hour, when the very fabric of reality would be tested, when the light of hope would flicker precariously on the brink of oblivion, and she, Eliana the forsaken, the unloved, the unsupported, was the one who had to navigate that storm. She was the one who had to bear witness. She was the one who had to endure. A single tear traced a path through the grime on her cheek. Not a tear of sadness, but a tear of profound, unwavering resolve. The violet sky seemed to deepen the shadows, to lengthen, and the wind to intensify its lament. But within her, the ember of conviction burned a little brighter. She rose, her movements slow and deliberate, each step a testament to her enduring strength. The rock beneath her feet remained cold, the silence remained oppressive, and the loneliness remained her constant companion. But she would not break. She would not falter. She would not abandon the path, however desolate, however lonely. For even in this profound solitude, she carried within her the echo of the divine, a silent promise of a purpose yet to be fulfilled, a destiny yet to be claimed. She was alone, yes, but she was not forgotten, and that she realized was enough. For now, the whisper resonated within her, a cold, clear command. The shadow lengthens. Begin. The whisper, a crystalline shard of sound piercing the desolate quiet, resonated within her. A cold, clear command. The shadow lengthens. Begin. It wasn't a voice she heard with her ears, but with the very marrow of her bones. A vibration that settled deep within her soul. A directive laced with an urgency that made her breath hitch. Begin what? The question, unspoken, hung in the air, heavy and suffocating as the violet sky bled further into the encroaching darkness. Begin to what end? To meet what challenge? She looked out at the ravaged landscape, a panorama of despair, painted in shades of gray and bruised purple. The land itself seemed to weep the sparse vegetation, withered and twisted, clawing at the earth, as if desperate to hold on to some semblance of life. It was a reflection of the states of the world, a mirror to the spiritual decay that festered within the hearts of men. and they, the very people she had striven to protect, to guide, had turned away. They had abandoned her to this desolate expanse, their fear and their selfish desires outweighing any sense of duty, any flicker of faith. The memory of their rejection was a relentless tide threatening to pull her under. The hushed whispers behind her back, the averted gazes, the carefully constructed explanations for her absence from their gatherings, all echoed in the chamber of her heart. They called her strange, unsettling, a bringer of ill omen. They claimed her visions were delusions, her warnings the ramblings of a disturbed mind. They had sought solace in empty rituals and fleeting pleasures, blinding themselves to the encroaching darkness, deafening themselves to the divine whispers she desperately tried to relay. And now, as the shadow truly began to lengthen, they huddled together in their self-made fortresses of denial, oblivious to the imminent storm. Eliana closed her eyes, drawing the pain inward, transforming it into a wellspring of fierce, solitary determination. It was not a bitterness she felt, not a vengeful rage. It was a profound sadness, a cosmic sorrow for their blindness, their willful ignorance. She understood their fear, the primal instinct to cling to the familiar, the comfortable. But understanding did not lessen the sting of their abandonment. It only amplified the burden. She now carried the weight of a world spiraling toward oblivion, with no one to share it but the desolate winds and the silent stones. The whisper pulsed again, insistent, demanding. Begin. She focused on the feeling, the subtle hum within her, the conduit to the divine. It was there, always there, a fragile thread connecting her to something vast and ancient, something beyond human comprehension. It pulsed with a light that defied the surrounding darkness, a promise of hope amidst the despair. She reached for it, allowing it to flow through her, to fill the emptiness within. Her hands, calloused and scarred from years of toil and hardship, began to glow with a faint ethereal luminescence. The light intensified, radiating outwards, chasing away the immediate shadows. It wasn't a brilliant, blinding light, but a soft, gentle radiance like the first rays of dawn struggling to pierce a storm-laden sky. It felt ancient, imbued with the weight of millennia, the wisdom of countless generations. The ground beneath her feet trembled a subtle vibration that resonated with the light emanating from her hands. Cracks began to appear in the parched earth, spiderwebbing outwards. From those cracks, a vibrant green began to push through tenacious shoots of life, defying the barrenness. Small, delicate blossoms unfurled their petals, shimmering with an otherworldly beauty. The scent, a heady fragrance of honeysuckle and lavender, filled the air, a balm to the soul, a stark contrast to the pervasive stench of decay. This, she realized, was the beginning. Not a grand, dramatic spectacle, but a quiet, unassuming act of creation, a defiance of the encroaching darkness. The shadow lengthened not just across the land, but also across the hearts of men. It manifested as apathy, as cynicism, as a deep-seated fear of anything beyond their limited understanding. And to combat that shadow, she could not wield thunderbolts or summon legions of angels. She had to nurture to heal, to awaken the dormant spark of hope within the hearts of those who had abandoned her. She remembered the words of the ancient scriptures, the ones they had scorned, the ones they had dismissed as archaic and irrelevant. A single candle can banish 1,000 shadows. It was not about the power she possessed, but about the light she chose to share. A wave of weariness washed over her, threatening to overwhelm her resolve. The task before her seemed insurmountable. How could she, A solitary figure, a woman rejected and scorned, possibly rekindled the flame of faith in a world consumed by despair. Doubt gnawed at the edges of her mind, whispering insidious questions. Was she truly the chosen one, or was she merely a deluded fool, clinging to a futile hope? The whisper resonated again, stronger this time, a comforting presence in the storm. You are the reflection, the vessel, the remembrance. She looked up at the violet sky, searching for guidance, for reassurance. And for the first time, in what felt like an eternity, she saw a single star emerge, piercing the oppressive darkness. It wasn't a brilliant, dazzling star, but a small, steady light, a beacon of hope in the vast expanse of the night. She realized then that her strength didn't lie in her power, but in her vulnerability, in her ability to empathize with their pain, to understand their fear. They had rejected her because she represented something they were unwilling to confront: the truth about themselves, the truth about their world, the truth about the divine. But perhaps if she could approach them with compassion, with unwavering kindness, she could chip away at their defenses, awaken their dormant conscience. She began to walk her steps slow and deliberate towards the distant settlements, towards the people who had abandoned her. The ground beneath her feet remained cold. The silence remained oppressive, but the light radiating from her hands grew stronger, illuminating the path ahead. The green shoots continued to emerge, defying the barrenness, a testament to the enduring power of hope. She knew it would be a long and arduous journey, fraught with challenges and setbacks. She knew that many would continue to reject her, to scorn her, to deny her. But she would not falter. She would not abandon her mission, for she was the reflection, the vessel, the remembrance, and she carried within her the unwavering conviction that even in the darkest of hours, even when surrounded by the deepest despair, a single spark of hope could ignite a flame that would illuminate the world. The whisper, a constant companion, urged her onward. The shadow lengthens. Begin and remember. She carried that remembrance, the memory of her parents' faces etched with a quiet strength. The echo of her grandmother's lullabies, a soothing balm against the storm of her visions. The fleeting joy of childhood games, a poignant reminder of the innocence she fought to preserve. These were not merely memories. They were anchors, grounding her to the very essence of what she sought to protect. They were the echoes of a lost world, a world where faith flourished, where compassion reigned, where humanity and divinity intertwined. And as she walked, a single blossom detached itself from a newly sprung shoot, floating gently towards her. It settled in her hand, its petals unfolding in a slow, mesmerizing dance. It was a simple flower, unassuming, yet radiating an extraordinary beauty. A promise. The blossom, a fragile symphony of white and palest gold, pulsed with a warmth that resonated deep within her bones. It wasn't a physical heat, but something far more profound. A warmth of recognition, a homecoming of the spirit. She closed her fingers around it, the delicate petals yielding beneath her touch, feeling a surge of something akin to grief. Grief for what had been lost, grief for what might never be, but also an impossibly grief tempered by a fierce, resolute joy. The whisper coiled tighter around her consciousness, less an urging now, more a mournful echo. They do not see child. They do not remember. Her journey had been a solitary descent into the heart of a dying world. The city's once vibrant hubs of ingenuity and artistry now festered with a despair so thick, so pervasive it clung to the air like a miasma. The faces she encountered were masks of resignation, eyes hollowed by apathy, voices muted by fear. They looked past her, through her, as if she were a ghost, a phantom of a better time. And the rejections, the dismissals, the outright hostility, they were a constant grinding weight upon her soul. The elders of the scattered communities, clinging desperately to their dwindling resources and fragmented traditions, regarded her with suspicion. They saw her visions, her pronouncements of a coming reckoning, as the ramblings of a mad woman, a threat to their fragile equilibrium. The younger generation, seduced by the promises of the Shadow's dominion, promises of stability, of an end to suffering, mocked her earnest pleas for remembrance, for faith. They had never known a world bathed in the light of grace. They were children of the twilight, comfortable in their shadows, afraid of the brilliance that could consume them. It wasn't simply a lack of belief. It was a deep-seated fear of hope itself. Hope, she realized, was a dangerous thing in a world steeped in despair. It demanded action. It necessitated sacrifice. It required a vulnerability that few were willing to embrace. It stirred the embers of longing and the pain of that longing. The stark contrast to their present reality was often unbearable. To hope was to acknowledge the possibility of loss. And in a world already stripped bare, what did they have left to lose? She understood, with a clarity that brought a fresh wave of sorrow, why no one supported her. It wasn't a failure of her mission, but a failure of their spirits. They had surrendered. They had become prisoners of their own pain. They had allowed the shadow to not merely darken their world, but to eclipse their very souls. The blossom trembled in her hand. She felt the weight of their collective disillusionment, their silent condemnation pressing down upon her. Tears, hot and stinging, traced paths down her cheeks, mixing with the dust that coated her skin. She stumbled, and for a moment, she nearly succumbed to the crushing despair. The whisper intensified a keening lament that threatened to drown her. Turn back, child. Save yourself. There is nothing left to save but the flower. The simple, unassuming flower radiated a strength she didn't know she possessed. It was a beacon in the encroaching darkness, a tangible embodiment of the remembrance she carried. She raised her gaze towards the bruised and bleeding sky and whispered, her voice raw and fragile, "I remember." And as she spoke, a single ray of sunlight pierced the oppressive gloom, illuminating the blossom in her hand. It was a fleeting moment, a fragile promise, but it was enough. Enough to rekindle the dying embers within her. Enough to remind her why she had embarked on this perilous journey. The memory of her father's voice, strong and clear, resonated in her mind. The truth, Ilara, is always found in the smallest of things. A single seed can grow into a mighty tree. A single word can spark a revolution. Never underestimate the power of the quiet ones. He hadn't meant literal seeds or words, of course. He'd been speaking of something far more profound. The power of unwavering faith, the strength of compassion, the resilience of the human spirit. He had spoken of the beauty that lies hidden within the brokenness, the hope that flickers even in the darkest of nights. She remembered her grandmother's hands, gnarled and weathered, gently kneading dough for the ritual bread, her voice a soothing hum as she chanted ancient prayers. The divine resides within child. Seek it not in grand temples or elaborate ceremonies, but in the stillness of your heart. And she remembered her mother's laughter, bright and unrestrained, a melody that chased away the shadows, a laughter that reminded her of the joy that still existed in the world even amidst the suffering, a laughter that echoed the promise of a brighter dawn. These were not just memories, they were prophecies. They were a map guiding her through the labyrinth of despair. They were the armor she needed to face the coming storm. The single blossom began to glow, pulsing with a luminescence that spread outward, bathing the immediate area in a soft, ethereal light. It wasn't a blinding radiance, but a gentle, comforting warmth that seemed to soothe the very air around her. And then she heard it. Not the whisper, but something else. A faint, fragile chorus of voices rising from the depths of the desolate landscape. Voices humming an ancient melody, a song of hope and remembrance. She followed the sound, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The voices grew stronger, coalescing into a unified refrain. She emerged from the shadows into a hidden valley, a place she hadn't seen on any of her maps. It was a pocket of unexpected beauty, a miniature paradise amidst the wasteland. A small spring gurgled merrily, nourishing a patch of wildflowers that carpeted the valley floor. And in the center, a small group of people were gathered around a flickering fire, singing the ancient song. They were different from the others she had encountered. Their eyes held a spark of hope. Their faces were etched with a quiet strength. They hadn't surrendered. They had retreated, preserving the flame of faith within their hidden sanctuary. As she approached an elderly woman, her face lined with wisdom and compassion stepped forward. "You are Ilara," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "We have been waiting for you." Ilara stared at her, speechless. "But how?" The woman smiled. "The blossom guided us. It carries the remembrance." She gestured to the flower still clutched in Ilara's hand. "It is a sign that hope is not extinguished." And then the woman said something that resonated with a profound truth, a truth that settled deep within Ilara's soul. "You are not alone, child. You never were." The shadow's whispers had lied. The silence had been deceptive. There were those who remembered. There were those who still clung to the flickering flame of faith. And they had been waiting for her, the chosen one, not to save them, but to remind them that they were capable of saving themselves. The true power wasn't hers to wield. It was theirs dormant within them, waiting to be awakened. The flower pulsed once more, and Ilara knew with unwavering certainty that her journey had just begun. The fight wasn't about finding support. It was about igniting it. The air within the sanctuary hummed not with electricity, but with a resonance far older, far deeper. The palpable vibration of shared belief, of a devotion painstakingly guarded against the encroaching darkness. It tasted of dust and ancient prayers, of quiet resilience and unshed tears. Ilara felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a burden she hadn't realized she'd been carrying, the crushing certainty of utter isolation. Shadow's campaign had been brutally effective, eroding not just belief, but the very memory of it, scattering faith like seeds on barren ground. It had whispered relentlessly, weaving a tapestry of despair, so intricate, so pervasive, that few dared to speak of the old ways, the old truths. And she, Ilara, had believed the whispers, had felt the chilling frost of abandonment settle upon her heart. Now looking into the eyes of this community, these people, she saw not pity, not expectation, but a quiet, unwavering strength. Faces etched with hardship, lined with sorrow, yet illuminated by a spark of something enduring. A spark that mirrored the fragile glow emanating from the blossom in her hand. It was a warmth that spread through her, chasing away the phantom chill, thawing the frozen landscape of her spirit. The elderly woman, whose name she soon learned was Lyra, drew her closer. The shadow thrives on separation. Lyra said, her voice a low, comforting murmur. It twists the bonds of kinship, convinces each soul that they stand alone against the storm. That is its greatest weapon, not brute force, but the insidious fracturing of unity. She paused, her gaze piercingly direct. You have felt that, haven't you, child? The feeling of being adrift, of carrying a burden no one else understands. Ilara nodded, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. It felt absolute, as if I was shouting into a void. The memory of her solitary struggles, the dismissive sneers, the outright hostility she'd encountered from those swallowed by the shadow's influence, flooded back, a bitter tide threatening to drown her again. Lyra gently wiped the tear away with a calloused thumb. The void echoes with the voices of those who have succumbed. It's a deafening chorus meant to silence those who still listen for the true song. But the song remains Ilara. It has always remained. It merely needed a conduit, a reminder. A young man, barely more than a boy, stepped forward, his eyes bright with hesitant hope. We've heard rumors, whispers of someone who understood. He swallowed his voice, cracking with emotion. But we thought it was just a story, a legend to keep the embers of hope alive. Legends are born from truth, Lyra responded, her voice imbued with a gentle authority. They are the echoes of lives lived in accordance with the principles we have forgotten. Ilara carries a piece of that truth within her, but her carrying it is not enough. The weight returned subtly different this time, not the crushing despair of isolation, but the sobering responsibility of leadership. Ilara felt a flicker of panic rise within her. But I don't know how. I'm not strong enough. I don't do anything. The shadow's voice, insidious and familiar, tried to worm its way back into her mind, whispering doubts and insecurities. Lyra's hand closed over Ilara's. Strength is not measured in might, child, but in endurance. It is not found in power, but in compassion. You are not meant to do anything, Ilara. You are meant to inspire, to remind, to be a mirror reflecting the light that already resides within each of us. She raised her voice, addressing the assembled group. We have waited too long, shrouded in fear and doubt. The shadow has stolen our courage, disguised it as weakness. It has convinced us that we are powerless. But that is a lie. We are the descendants of those who faced impossible odds and persevered. We are the inheritors of a legacy of faith and fortitude, and that legacy cannot be extinguished. A murmur rippled through the group, a hesitant affirmation of Lyra's words. An old woman, her face a roadmap of hardship, spoke, her voice raspy with age. It's been so long since I felt this. Ilara realized what she meant. This sense of collective purpose, this shared conviction, this tangible hope. She looked around, truly seeing the people before her for the first time. Farmers, artisans, healers, teachers. Ordinary people, extraordinary in their resilience. Each face bore the marks of suffering, but each also held a flicker of defiance, a quiet determination that had been suppressed for far too long. Suddenly, a young girl, no older than 7, broke free from her mother's grasp and ran to Alara, offering her a single wilted wildflower. "My grandma told me to give this to you," she whispered, her eyes wide with innocent trust. "She said you were the one." The simple act, the innocent offering, pierced Ilara's armor of self-doubt. It was a tangible manifestation of hope, a direct link to the lineage of faith. The flower, though faded, pulsed with a soft inner light, mirroring the blossom she still held. The tears flowed freely now, not tears of despair, but of profound relief, of a joy so overwhelming it felt like a physical ache. "God's message," Lyra said, her voice resonating with conviction, "is not that you must conquer the shadow alone. His message is that you must remind us that we are capable of conquering it. He has not abandoned us. He has been waiting for us to remember who we are." The weight on Alara's shoulders shifted again, this time not into a burden, but into a mantle. It was the mantle of remembrance, the responsibility to awaken the dormant faith within the hearts of her people. It wasn't about being a savior, but about being a catalyst, a spark to ignite the tinder of hope that still smoldered beneath the ashes of despair. She thought of the shadow's relentless propaganda, the insidious lies that had poisoned the minds of so many. It wasn't enough to simply reveal the truth. She needed to help people believe it again. She needed to remind them of the beauty of connection, the power of community, the enduring strength of faith. What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling with a newfound resolve. Lyra smiled. "We remember. We share our stories. We sing the old songs. We rekindle the bonds of kinship. We remind each other that we are not alone. And we wait, Alara, for the hearts that are ready to awaken." She paused, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. "The shadow will not yield easily. It will test our resolve. It will exploit our weaknesses. It will attempt to isolate us once more." A young man spoke up, fear etched on his face. "What if we fail?" Lyra's gaze was unwavering. "Failure is not an end, child. It is a lesson. The true failure lies not in falling, but in refusing to rise again." She turned back to Alara. "Your journey will be fraught with hardship, child. You will face opposition and betrayal. But remember this, you are not walking this path alone. We are here. We are with you. And the God who created us is with us all." Alara looked at the faces around her, a sea of hope and resilience. The shadow had tried to break them, to isolate them, to extinguish their faith. But it had failed. The spark remained, flickering in the darkness, waiting to be fanned into a flame. And she, Alara, was the wind. The blossom pulsed a final radiant light, bathing the sanctuary in a warm golden glow. And Alara knew with a certainty that resonated deep within her soul that the true battle had just begun. It was not a battle to be fought with weapons or magic, but a battle for hearts and minds. A battle to reclaim the truth, to restore the bonds of community, and to rekindle the enduring flame of faith. She took a deep breath, the scent of dust and ancient prayers filling her lungs, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a surge of unwavering hope. The silence was broken. The song would be sung again. The silence, profound and weighty, settled after the blossom's final luminescence, clinging to the sanctuary like the scent of ancient myrrh. It wasn't an emptiness, but a held breath, a collective anticipation that vibrated in the stone floor beneath Alara's feet. The faces around her, the faithful of Etheria, remained etched with a fragile hope, a hesitant blossoming of their own after so long spent shriveled in the winter of the shadow's despair. They looked to her, not with a clamoring demand for salvation, but with a quiet plea, a desperate yearning for a guiding light in the encroaching darkness, and she felt it, the weight of that yearning pressing down upon her, a physical burden alongside the knowledge of what lay ahead. The elders, wise and weathered by decades of witnessing hardship, nodded slowly, their expressions conveying both encouragement and an unspoken understanding of the trials that awaited. Young children, their eyes wide with a nascent understanding of the world's cruelty, clung to the skirts of their mothers, seeking solace in a reassurance she feared she couldn't entirely provide. She was but a vessel, a conduit, she reminded herself. The strength wasn't hers alone to offer. The whispers began a low hum that swelled gradually, a collective murmur of questions and anxieties. Why no one supports us, the query hung in the air, not voiced, but felt a tangible despair, radiating from the hearts of those who had seen their livelihood stolen, their families scattered, their faith mocked and trampled upon. The shadow had been masterful in its campaign of isolation, convincing the outlying villages, the far-flung settlements, that Etheria was a nest of dissenters, a haven for rebels who deserved to suffer. They were left to fend for themselves, branded and abandoned by those who feared the shadow's wrath. Ilara felt a wave of that pain wash over her, the raw, unfiltered hurt of abandonment. It was a familiar ache, one she'd carried since her parents were taken, a constant companion in the desolate landscape of her early years. But now, amplified by the collective sorrow of the people before her, it threatened to overwhelm her. She closed her eyes, drawing upon the lessons of the elders, the enduring strength passed down through generations of resilience. She drew upon the silent wisdom of the earth beneath the sanctuary, the unwavering patience of the mountains that had witnessed centuries of suffering and yet remained steadfast. Opening her eyes, she saw Lyrian, the young scholar, his face pale and drawn, his brow furrowed, with a frustration that mirrored the unspoken question in the air. He had spent countless hours poring over ancient texts, searching for a loophole, a solution, a way to bridge the chasm of distrust that separated Etheria from the rest of the land. He saw the futility of their efforts, the relentless tide of propaganda that painted them as monsters. Ilara walked toward him, her footsteps echoing softly on the stone floor. The truth, she began, her voice low but clear, is not a commodity to be bought and sold. It is a seed, and seeds require fertile ground, unwavering patience, and a willingness to withstand the storms. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. They do not support us now because they are blinded. Blinded by fear, by lies, by the insidious whispers of the shadow. They believe what they have been told, and it is our burden, our sacred duty, to illuminate the darkness. She saw doubt flickering in Lyrian's eyes. But how, Ilara? How do we reach those who refuse to hear? How do we break through the walls of prejudice and fear? Ilara placed a hand on his arm, a silent gesture of reassurance. Not through shouting, not through condemnation, but through unwavering acts of kindness, through unwavering displays of compassion. We will be the light they cannot ignore. We will be the warmth they crave. We will be the embodiment of the truth they have forgotten. The task felt insurmountable, a Sisyphean labor that could break even the strongest of wills. Yet as she looked into the faces of the Etherians, she saw something more than despair. She saw an unwavering determination, a quiet defiance that burned beneath the surface of their fear. She saw the embers of hope waiting to be rekindled. They will say we are fools. She continued, her voice gaining strength. They will say we are naive. They will accuse us of weakness. Let them. Their words are empty. Their accusations are born of fear. We will not respond with anger. We will respond with love. We will respond with grace. We will respond by being the unwavering beacon of hope that the world so desperately needs. She recalled the words of the Blossom's vision. The greatest weapon is not power, but empathy. It was not enough to simply defeat the shadow through force. They needed to dismantle the structures of fear that allowed it to thrive. They needed to heal the wounds of mistrust to rebuild the bridges of understanding. The journey would be arduous, fraught with setbacks and disappointments. There would be moments of profound doubt, moments when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. But she knew deep within her heart that she was not alone. The memory of her parents, their quiet strength, and unwavering faith fortified her resolve. The wisdom of the elders, the resilience of the people of Etheria sustained her hope. We will begin small, she declared, her voice resonating with newfound conviction. We will send emissaries to the outlying villages, not with pleas for support, but with offerings of aid. We will share our harvests. We will offer our skills. We will tend to their wounds, both physical and spiritual. We will show them, not tell them, what it means to be a people of compassion, a people of light. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, a hesitant but encouraging response. Lyrian's face softened, the lines of frustration easing slightly. He understood. It wasn't about grand pronouncements or fiery declarations. It was about the quiet, consistent acts of kindness that would chip away at the walls of prejudice, that would slowly, steadily illuminate the darkness. Ilara turned to the children, kneeling so she could meet their gaze. Never lose your hope, little ones, she said softly. Never let the darkness extinguish the light within you. The world needs your kindness, your compassion, your unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity. She saw a spark of recognition in their eyes, a nascent understanding of the power they possessed. The burden still felt heavy, the path ahead still shrouded in uncertainty. But now it was tempered by a renewed sense of purpose, a quiet determination that burned within her soul. She was not just Ilara, the orphaned girl who had grown up in the shadow of loss. She was a vessel, a conduit, a beacon of hope for a people desperately yearning for light. And she would not falter. She would not abandon them. She would lead them not with a commanding voice or an iron fist, but with a gentle heart and an unwavering faith. The song would be sung again. Not a triumphant anthem of victory, but a quiet, resilient melody of hope echoing across the land, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the unwavering belief in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. A song that would slowly, painstakingly illuminate the darkness and remind the world what it truly meant to be human. And she, Ilara, would be its voice. The first of the emissaries, a young woman named Seraphina, stepped forward, her face resolute. "I will go, Ilara," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "I will show them the kindness of Etheria." Others followed, eager to participate, their initial apprehension replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose. The spark had been fanned. The flame was beginning to flicker, fragile but persistent, ready to illuminate the darkness. The long, arduous journey had begun. The silence that followed Seraphina's declaration was a vast, echoing chamber within Alara's soul. It wasn't the silence of agreement, not yet. It was the silence of deep consideration, the kind that settles in when the enormity of a task presses down, threatening to crush the spirit. She saw the faces of those who stepped forward, their eyes mirroring a complex blend of fear and devotion. They were young, mostly drawn to the fragile hope she represented, perhaps believing in a future they themselves felt incapable of forging. And in their youthful eagerness, she saw the weight of expectation. She carried a burden that threatened to pull her under, to extinguish the very light she sought to share. Kindness. Ilara murmured the word, a fragile prayer escaping her lips. Etheria's kindness. It is not a weapon, nor a shield. It is a balm, a whisper in the storm. And those who have grown accustomed to the clang of steel, to the harsh pronouncements of authority, will not readily accept it. She traced the intricate pattern woven into the hem of her simple tunic, a pattern her grandmother, long gone, had painstakingly created, a memory of warmth and unconditional love in a life perpetually shadowed by loss. They will mock it. They will scorn it. They will see it as weakness. A tremor ran through her, not of fear, but of the profound weariness that had become her constant companion. The isolation had been brutal, a slow, grinding erosion of her spirit. To be cast aside, dismissed as a fanciful dreamer, her visions disregarded as mere delusion, it had been a wound that festered, poisoning her hope. Yet standing before these earnest faces, she knew she couldn't dwell on her own pain. Their faith in her, however tentative, demanded a strength she wasn't certain she possessed. They will ask why no one supports her. They will whisper she is alone. They will build their walls higher, close their hearts tighter, and claim that those who offer kindness are fools. Her voice gained a quiet, undeniable strength, resonating with a conviction born not of arrogance, but of a deep, abiding sorrow. They will believe the lies they tell themselves, the comforting narratives of power and dominance, because facing the truth is too terrifying. Because admitting their own failings is too painful. She lifted her gaze, meeting the eyes of a grizzled elder Silas, who had lost his family to the relentless raids of the northern clans. His face was etched with grief. His shoulders stooped under the weight of unimaginable loss. Yet even he, a man hardened by despair, held a spark of hope in his eyes. That spark, she realized, was not for her. It was for the possibility of something more, something better. But we are not defined by their rejection. Ilara continued, her voice laced with a gentle urgency. We are defined by what we choose to be, by the enduring power of compassion, by the unwavering belief in the inherent goodness of humanity, even when it is buried beneath layers of pain and anger. A young boy, barely old enough to wield a practice sword, tugged on Seraphina's sleeve, his eyes wide with a silent question. Seraphina smiled, a radiant, reassuring smile, and knelt to speak to him. Ilara understood. They needed more than just words. They needed seeing. They needed to witness the kindness in action. Seraphina will go to the village of Oakhaven. Alara announced, her voice clear and decisive. A village known for its stubborn pride, its distrust of outsiders, its reliance on force to maintain its meager existence. She will offer them nothing but kindness, nothing but understanding. She will listen to their fears, acknowledge their pain, and offer them a hand, not a judgment. The collective intake of breath was palpable. Oakhaven was a fortress of bitterness, ruled by a man named Kale, a tyrant whose cruelty was legendary. To approach him with kindness was to invite ridicule, to court danger. It is a dangerous mission. Lara admitted, her gaze sweeping over the faces before her. And it may well fail. Kale will likely reject Seraphina. He will mock her efforts. He will try to break her spirit. But she must not waver. She must be the embodiment of Etheria's grace, even in the face of hostility. The weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on Seraphina's shoulders, but she didn't flinch. She simply nodded her eyes, reflecting a quiet determination. "Why do you choose to endure such hardship, Alara?" A voice called out from the back of the gathering. It was Lyra, a woman known for her sharp wit and even sharper tongue. She had always been skeptical of Alara's visions, dismissing them as the fanciful dreams of a lonely girl. Why not fight? Why not wield a sword? Why not show them the power they fear? Alara turned, her expression gentle, despite Lyra's challenging tone. Because she said softly, true power lies not in conquering, but in healing. Not in domination, but in understanding. To fight fire with fire only perpetuates the cycle of violence. To meet hatred with hatred only breeds more hatred. She remembered her father's words, spoken years ago, before he vanished into the encroaching darkness, swallowed by the relentless conflict. The greatest battles are not fought with swords. Alara, he had said, his voice weary but resolute. They are fought within the human heart. They believe strength lies in might. She continued, her voice ringing with quiet conviction. But they are wrong. True strength lies in the ability to forgive, in the courage to extend a hand to those who have wronged us, in the unwavering belief that even the most hardened heart can be softened by kindness. A single tear traced a path down Lyra's cheek, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in Alara's words. The cynicism that had been her shield for so long seemed to crack, revealing a flicker of vulnerability beneath. "You will each face trials," Alara said, her gaze encompassing the entire group. "You will be ridiculed. You will be rejected. You will be tempted to abandon your faith, to succumb to the darkness that surrounds us. But you must not. You must remember that you are not alone. Etheria is with you. I am with you." She paused, drawing a deep breath, the scent of pine and damp earth filling her lungs. She closed her eyes, and in the stillness she felt it again. The familiar surge of energy, the flow of visions, the echo of voices long silenced. It was a dizzying, overwhelming sensation, a reminder of the immense responsibility she carried. They will ask, why no one supports you? They will point to your small numbers, your lack of resources, your perceived weakness. But they fail to see the power of a single spark. They fail to understand that even the smallest flame can illuminate the darkest night. She opened her eyes, her gaze unwavering. "Go now, Seraphina. Carry the light." Be the kindness they desperately need. And remember, she added her voice, barely a whisper. Even in your darkest hour, know that you are loved. You are not forgotten. You are the chosen ones, and the fate of this world rests in your hands. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, fraught with peril and uncertainty. But as Seraphina turned to leave, a sense of quiet purpose settled over the gathering. The song would be sung again, a fragile melody of hope carried on the wind, a testament to the enduring power of compassion and the unwavering belief in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. And Alara, the orphaned girl, the vessel of hope, would remain a beacon in the darkness, her faith burning bright, a silent promise of a dawn yet to come. The silence of their farewell was filled not with despair, but with the quiet resonance of a shared purpose, a silent vow to keep the flame alive, even when the wind threatened to extinguish it. The world waited unaware on the precipice of a change born not of force, but of the quiet revolution of the human heart. The weight of the words of Alara's blessing pressed upon Seraphina, like the very air she breathed, thick and heavy with unspoken expectation. Leaving the sanctuary felt like stepping out of a dream, the warmth of shared faith instantly swallowed by the biting chill of the encroaching twilight. The path ahead, once a nebulous idea shimmering with possibility, now solidified into a stark, unforgiving reality. The faces of the others lingered in her mind. Old Miriam, her hands gnarled with the labor of a life lived in quiet piety. Young Caleb, his eyes reflecting a fierce, almost desperate hope. The stoic healer Lyra, who carried the burden of so many unseen wounds. They were all tethered to this hidden place, their lives intertwined with its ancient magic, enshrouded in its protective secrecy. And she, Seraphina, was leaving, venturing into the world's swirling chaos to carry a fragile ember of their hope. The initial steps were hesitant, each footfall echoing the doubt that clawed at the edges of her resolve. Why her, why them? What right did they have to believe, to expect that a small band of forgotten souls could influence the course of a world steeped in conflict and shadowed by despair? The murmur of the wind seemed to mock her whispering accusations of foolishness, of misplaced faith. It echoed the voices she'd heard all her life, the cynical laughter of those who had long abandoned hope, the weary resignation of those who believed the darkness was simply too vast, too entrenched to ever be overcome. She remembered her father's words, a stinging